Wheel of Genre, the show for readers who are ready to unleash hell on Europe. Right now, we are reading every short story in the Weird anthology, including this one, Charles Beaumont's The Howling Man. I'm Zach, and this week I'm really interested in the trolley problem. You know, which way are you going to pull the switch in the trolley? And if I can somehow squeeze that interpretation into this in the episode. I'm going to try.
I'm Bob. I thought this was such a great story. I'm interested in a lot. I don't want to spoil it because what I'm interested in, I think will spoil the story. But I think this is one of my favorite ones so far in the entire Weird collection, Zach.
Absolutely. Before we gush about how good the story is, what do we know about Charles Beaumont? Beaumont? Ooh.
I'm guessing Beaumont. I've never heard anyone say Beaumont. That sounds very... I
just made that
nice.
up.
I'm Charles Beaumont. I know nothing, Zach. What do you know?
Well, let's see. So I watched a short clip of a documentary called Charles Beaumont, Short Life of Twilight Zone's Magic Man. And he seems to really have been an it guy when it comes to the Twilight Zone. I saw a video of Rod Serling accepting an Emmy for the Twilight Zone, and he specifically thanked Charles Beaumont for all of the work that he did on it. Charles wrote nearly 20 episodes, as well as did screenplays for a couple Hollywood films, including The Seven Faces of Dr. Lao, The Intruder, and The Mask of the Red Death. He died kind of young, but it seems like he did good work in his time.
You got a lot done. Do you know when he died? How old was he? Because that is a lot. 20 episodes of the Twilight Zone.
He had some kind of like degenerative neural disorder. Some say Alzheimer's. I did read some other kind of degenerative thing mentioned elsewhere. But he died at age 38.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. This story was adapted into a Twilight Zone episode, which I cannot wait to watch. I really want to see it. I watched a couple clips. It looked good.
We must have seen a bunch of them. I mean, 20 episodes. No one writes that much for a TV series. That's an incredible achievement. I bet we've seen a few of them. I am so interested in the story for a number of reasons. And I also kind of think Castle Rock, the kind of mashup story about Stephen King stories put together, might be based on this because it's the same idea. We have someone who is wanting to go on the grand tour, go around Europe. But in his adventure, he gets stuck, he gets sick, and it's almost a Dracula setup where you are stuck. The middle of Dracula. You wake up in an abbey, you're being taken care of, you don't know what's happened to you. And so this guy is in the abbey and just keeps hearing the howling, which the abbots don't admit to. They say, no, you don't hear anything. There's nothing there. He's bedridden. When he asks to go and look at it, they say, there's no reason to go look. Every room's the same. It would be a waste of your time. They keep kind of giving him half-truths or seemingly lie to him, and he gets more and more upset about what's going on. And I think this is so interesting, and it feels very weird. It's the idea of someone telling you, you really shouldn't do that. You shouldn't go this way. There is a truth that's going to be too scary for you. And then someone becoming obsessed and saying, no, I need to find this out no matter what. And for this guy in particular, he says, no, I know a truth, and you are lying to me, and I have to save someone's life, defy you.
I think what I loved most about this story was the kind of like genre play at work. It was very knowing winks to several different kinds of stories that I think you and I have both read many, many times over. You mentioned him going on the grand adventure or the grand tour actually of Europe, but it shifts between something like a travelogue, a sexcapade, maybe something, out of Casanova's memoirs almost, to suddenly like a weird Kafka-esque story, the kind that you would find throughout this anthology that we've read, and very gothic feeling. We think that the story has turned from a travelogue, from a very American perspective travelogue, to like he stepped into a horror novel, and we have this haunted abbey with these evil monks. But then the book ends, I think, on a kind of like confessionary tone. We get the feeling that he's confessing to a crime rather than continuing on to any other like genre of work. It's really, really interesting.
I think so too. I love there's a bookend to it too, because he describes coming from Austria, from Austria into Germany. And he says it was kind of like going into a photograph or going into a postcard. And the very end of it, it's described going back into the postcard to look back. Like you said, he reflects on what he did in the past. And I love what he does. So as he's gone on this tour, he's trapped with the evil monks. And it turns out the monks are not so evil. They were right all along, because this monk tells him the story of what happened and who's actually in there. He has visited the man, and the man says, help me, get out. They trapped me in here and they didn't tell me why. No one will tell me why. I've just been howling here for years and they won't let me out. And so, I mean, you should probably, look into that. That seems pretty terrible. So he does a very reasonable thing. And he confronts the abbots and says, who did you put in here? And they say, no, it's not a man at all. And eventually they tell him that is the man who caused so many, the thing that caused so many problems in this town. Right now you see it and it's fairly nice. It looks picturesque, but picturesque, sorry.
Picturesque, yeah.
But picturesque, not picaresque. It used to be a total den of sin. It was the craziest place on earth. I've been everywhere before, and this was the craziest, most sinful place I've ever seen in my life, until we trapped the devil. So they have the devil down there in that cell. And of course, he doesn't believe it. He says, oh, no, the abbots must be crazy. I'm going to go let him out and tell the authorities. But it seems he has actually let out the devil, Zach.
Right. And it seems like, in a weird sense, a lot of what this story hinges on is the idea of temptation, for me at least. But I think that it takes a while to get there. And I actually really appreciate the path that it goes to get to this moment of where he decides to let out the devil. As I was reading this, the old romantic idea came to my mind that a journey into nature is really a journey into the self, which is maybe another way to say that is when you go out into the woods, you're not out there exploring the world per se, or you are, sure, on the most flat literal level, but when you go out into the woods, when you go out into the world, what you're actually doing is you are going into the self, into the soul, and you are discovering who you are. We saw this recently in Algernon Blackwood's The Camp of the Dog, for example. These people from the city, when they go out camping, they become new people in a sense. They discover who they are. They take on new roles. And for one person, he takes on a new identity of a werewolf. But the point I want to make is that his journey through Europe is very much a journey into the self. And it culminates into this moment, this moment that I think is played like a light moment of moral conscience, but actually is like the theological stakes of everything. Do you trust someone who says that man is the devil and he must be punished and kept in there or else? Or do you listen to the individual who is suffering and saying, I was unfairly locked up here. I am in pain and I need help. So do you help the suffering person knowing that there's a possibility that it could unleash hell? Or do you listen to the spiritual authority who says, no, this one person deserves to suffer? And that is like the defining moment of this person, this boy's soul.
He really took a risk here, didn't he? He's got really big consequences. I mean, he makes the rational decision because he says, okay, I'm going to go tell the authorities. And even when he confronts the abbot and says, look, you're lying to me. I don't believe what you're telling me. And he tells him this whole story. He says, okay, I'll believe that. But to him, he's decided that this monk is crazy. He's like, okay, I'm not going to get any further with this. We're just going to go around in circles here. So good night. And then in the morning, he's going to go tell the authorities. I think you're right, though, in that idea of not going straight to the authorities, but stealing the key. He even says, no one in our family history has ever stolen a key, but here I am doing it, and I feel possessed with the need to do it. He is taken over by this need to, which seems very rational, to free someone who's been should not have been imprisoned, unfairly imprisoned. But
according to that person, at least.
This superstition. According
It's
to
like
that person. Yeah, it turns out the superstition was...
It's a he said, she said kind of a thing.
I guess in this case. But I think it is very cool, the consequences, at least in the story. Not for him, obviously, not for anyone. But they tell him, look, if you let him out, it's going to get crazy again. This town is going to turn upside down. There will be wars. And he says, okay, I know that this is all not true. Even when the police tell him, you've really made something bad here, he doesn't believe it. But then it says, shortly after, he started seeing all of these pictures of someone in a paper. He says, but I could not forget. When the pictures of the carpenter from Bonau Inn began to appear in all the papers, I grew uneasy, for I felt I'd seen this man before. When the carpenter invaded Poland, I was sure. And when the world was plunged into war and cities had the entrails blown asunder and the pleasant land I'd visited became a place of hate and death, I dreamed each night. He sees what happened. And maybe he's just believing in all of these superstitions. Maybe it's all just fake. But I think when he gets a postcard at the very end, the abbot saying, rest now, my son. We have him back with us again. It's that weird element of, I think they really did trap the devil.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's such a great conceit. The idea of you release the devil from the prison cell and it ends up being Adolf Hitler. And like this guy plunges Europe into World War II because of the weight of the moral, of this probably incorrect moral decision that he made. I thought that was like a really fun connection. I've seen people say that it's a little too heavy handed. I don't know. You only got so much time in this life to do fun things and short stories. Why not do it? If you got the idea, why not just go for it? I go easy on these authors, I think.
I love the weird nature of it too. So maybe it's too heavy-handed that it turns out to be Hitler and, all of the worst things ever start happening. But the initial description is so interesting when he's in that cell. It says, a man was in the cell, on all fours, circling like a beast, his head thrown back, a man. The moonlight showed his face. It cannot be described, not at least by me. A man past death might look like this, a victim of the Inquisition rack, the stake, the pincers. I think that was so interesting. He looks like this just terrible, evil creature crawling on all fours, and he still decides to free him.
Yeah, and the moonlight and, like you said, crawling on all fours. It's very beastly, werewolfy kind of vibe going on there. I like that. Mm-hmm. Well, I love this thing at the end where they're like, don't worry, we got him again. Because in this sense, I feel like it ends on a very positive note, and yet it kind of leaves the story open, because it's like, how long can you contain him? You know what I mean? We got him now, but for how long until the next guy comes around and frees the devil, and then Europe is plunged into darkness again.
He feels this really initial regret too. It's like a prescient regret because he feels quite listless in his life, and he ends up at this place because he's sick. But when he wakes up and he confronts the abbot, and the abbot kind of confronts him back. And he's like, what would you really get out of freeing this guy? And he says, well, maybe I should never have come here. I'm sorry I came here to be healed in the first place. He didn't make that choice. They just... he woke up there because they decided to save him. And the abbot says to him, like, well, maybe we've made the wrong decision in healing you, but we decided we needed to. But yeah, the consequences might be really bad. We can't let people into this monastery because we have the devil trapped. And if we let people in, it's always inviting the possibility that he'll escape again. But he has that weird, prescient kind of guilt of like, well, maybe I shouldn't have even been saved in the first place. Maybe you should have let me die. And then I think he really feels that guilt at the end of the story.
Yeah. I like the character progression. Like you said, he feels the guilt at the end of the story. He doesn't seem like a particularly guilty person at the start of the story. He seems like a very hedonistic person, maybe I would say. He's out on a sex romp of Europe, and he's having a blast, So it feels like what we're getting with the story is a very transformative experience for the narrator, and we get to see the narrator transform in real time. And I appreciate it for that.
Was it sorry, this is a side question. Is it the narrator going through the sex romp or the monk in his past?
I thought it was the narrator. So the monk talks about, you know, the devil and the woman, but the travelogue, he's like, oh, I went to Germany and I was just trying to get some tail. Let's see, it was what does he say?
Oh, and sometimes girls came to the door and knocked and asked if I had anything I needed.
Paris, of course, was enchanting and terrifying as a jungle must be to a zoo-born monkey. He's having a blast.
What is that? Okay. That sounds like a blast.
Well, I don't have too much more to say about this story, but I am reminded of the idea in Goethe, which, you know, the idea there, Mephisto, you know, he is part of the power that wills evil, but always works the good. So this idea that like Satan is fundamentally like a power under God. So the negative acts of Satan are in some way always in service of a greater good. So we are presented with this temptation here. You know, he steals the key. He does something completely out of character for him to free the person, to free the man. And it ends up actually being the devil. But in some sense, despite all of the negative things that happen, we have to wonder if there is a larger moral payoff that happens here, of any kind, whether in a, you know, global sense or in the sense of like this one person, the narrator. But it does seem like, you know, in a large sense, like I mentioned before, a trolley problem. You know, do you pull the switch and kill, you know, these people or those people as the trolley comes down the tracks? This person has to make a choice, and he doesn't know who is tied up on those railroad tracks on the other side of each of them. Yeah,
it feels like the ultimate unfair bargain, or not bargain, I guess the ultimate unfair bet, because he's probably, you know, in this case, it feels like he's doing the right thing, but then the worst possible consequences happen. You know, World War II happens. If the devil in this case is really Hitler, like nothing worse could be happening from this. You know, that is the worst person. So it's really unfair to Mr. Ellington, the character here, because he's trying to do the right thing, and then just the consequences are beyond measurable.
Well, I think that like this story has set me up more so than many of the other stories that were adapted in Twilight Zone, but to really want to explore that show again and to pay attention to who's writing it and what kind of stories they're doing. And even more than that, what are the Twilight Zone's writers publishing in the written form when they're not working on the show? That's the kind of things I want to, this makes me inspired to go check that kind of thing out. So onward, Bob. I'll talk to you later.
Talk to you later, Zach.